Welcome back to another Orange and Brown Talk podcast, another version of the Mayfield Matrix. Doug Lesmerises, Mary Kay Cabot, Ashley Bastock, Scott Patsko, and Dan Labbe. We are doing on this episode what it might be like if the Browns brought in a veteran this year to be there alongside Baker Mayfield for the 2022 season, either in competition or just as a backup who would be a more of a potential starter if need be than Case Keenum at this point. And the example that we're using is what the Tennessee Titans did when they had Marcus Mariota come back on the rookie extension in year 5, but they traded for Ryan Tannehill, who had been with the Miami Dolphins for 7 years and been the starter there the whole time. And they brought Tannehill in. They said, he's the backup, he's the backup, he's the backup. And then he took over as the starter in game 7 of that year after Mariota and the Titans started 2-4. What are the pros of this idea? Again, it is keeping a quarterback on a 5th-year extension without on the 5th-year option without an extension, but you bring in a real guy with him. Are there pros to this? Are there things that are like, you know what? This actually could make sense because this is bringing Baker back, which is what the Browns are saying right now, but there's an addition to it. Anybody?
So based on our first conversation about like in this series about you sign Baker, he's the guy, like my biggest issue with that plan was you're not giving yourself a safety net. And this is the plan to me that is like, there's a safety net there, but you're not immediately saying, oh, yep, Baker is full on in this competition. Like he's the guy until he's not. So I think in that way, like, it would be interesting to see how Baker Mayfield reacts to that. But compared to the first option we discussed, for me, the biggest difference, the biggest plus side is there is some cushion for them.
From an analytics standpoint, you can make the argument that this makes sense because it's kind of down the same road as you would go with the draft. You want to have more swings, right? The value in the draft is having more picks, not necessarily picking higher. So in that sense, you would have more swings at getting it right at quarterback because you'd have 2 guys there that I guess fall into that maybe category that we talked about previously. That's about the only pro I can come up with for this scenario.
That's an interesting, there's the analytics side of it, and then there's the real world side of it. Dan, do you see any pros to this possibly?
I mean, I guess the pro is you have a guy in the building if Baker comes back and he's not good. You have a guy that you can maybe still go make the playoffs with. I think the Tannehill thing was almost. I mean, that's going to be rare. I don't know if we're going to see that again, where a guy comes in and you take a swing on a guy like that and he turns into what Ryan Tannehill has been for Tennessee. Now there's some holes kind of poked in that because we saw what Tannehill looked like this year, with Derrick Henry out and AJ Brown missed games and Julio Jones missed a bunch of games. But, I think that's a rare instance. I mean, but that's the pro. You're kind of hedging. You're also saying something about Baker Mayfield too. If you've got to bring somebody in who can play behind him, that's, you're kind of telling, again, you're sending messages without actually saying things.
Are you torpedoing the chances of getting the best out of Baker Mayfield?
We have no idea how Baker Mayfield will respond to this. Has he ever been this guy? He's been the guy who chases things. He was the walk-on as a rookie. He was trying to find his way. And then he since he took over, he's never had to hold off anybody. It's just been him. And we don't know how he'd react to having a true, even if they don't call it a competition, if you're bringing in, somebody who's been an established starter elsewhere, then I think that kind of sends a bit of a message to him. We don't know how he'd react. We know how he's handled drama in the past, how he's handled adversity in the past, and it's been very loud and messy at times. I don't know. I think I hate this option so much. This is like, they have the potential to get into a spot. It's a hopeless spot where he wins whatever kind of competition or non-competition out of camp, and then maybe he falters and you bring in another guy, and what if that other guy doesn't look so hot? And then, man, you're in such a horrible place. You got this great team in theory around that quarterback, and you've done nothing to improve your position this season or going into next season.
You know, I think there are plenty of pros to this idea. Because I think as we all know, sometimes Baker Mayfield, when he has the fire lit underneath him a little bit, he comes out swinging, and you get a better version of Baker Mayfield when he plays a little mad, he plays a little angry, and nobody believes in him. Nobody believed in him in college. And, you know, he had to walk on twice and become a starter, and he had to show the world who he was. So maybe a little bit of Baker Mayfield having to come out again and show the world who he is, and that he's going to, you know, surprise everybody and come up off the mat. Maybe that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for him. So I think there are plenty of cons to this, and I mean pros to this. And I also believe that you do need to have a really good, solid plan B in the event that you put a little too much faith and stock in the fact that that he was going to come back healthy. Not only did he have the shoulder injury, but he had a foot injury, and then he had a knee injury as well. So he is going to be 27 heading into next season. And you know, he was sacked another 9 times in the final game. So his body has taken on some wear and tear. And just because the shoulder is going to be fine doesn't mean the rest of the body is. Therefore, I think you have to have a good, solid plan B, even though I like Case. I don't want Case Keenum to go anywhere because of some reasons we talked about on yesterday's pod, including the fact that Baker needs his confidence rebuilt, and Case is great for that. But I still think that this roster, if you're not paying a quarterback $40 million next year, that you can keep a Case Keenum at the money that he gets, and you can keep Baker Mayfield at the money he has, and bring on another quarterback. And you're still adding it all up and only being at the price of one elite premier quarterback. So I say bring it on.